The rain-slicked highway stretched out like a black ribbon under the sodium glow of the overhead lights, and that's when I saw it. A faded green sign for Exit 47 flickering in the downpour. I'd been driving for hours, my eyes heavy from the endless drone of tires on asphalt, but something about that number tugged at me. It wasn't on my GPS. Hell, it wasn't even in my memory of the route. But the exit ramp curved away into the night, inviting, almost insistent. Against every instinct screaming to keep going, I took it. The ramp spilled me onto a narrow two-lane road, the kind that winds through forgotten corners of the Midwest, flanked by cornfields that whispered in the wind. My name's Alex Harper, 34, a sales rep out of Chicago, the sort of guy who lives for the open road but hates the solitude it brings. I'd been heading to a conference in Des Moines, cutting through Iowa on I-80 when fatigue won out. The clock on my dashboard read 2:17 a.m., and the storm had turned the world into a blurred watercolor. That exit felt like a mercy, a chance to grab some coffee or crash at the first motel I saw. The road leveled out, and ahead a cluster of lights emerged from the gloom. A gas station with a single pump, its canopy sagging like an old man's shoulders. No big chain, just a weathered sign that read Riverside Fuel in peeling letters. I pulled in, the gravel crunching under my tires, and killed the engine. The rain hammered the roof as I stepped out, zipping my jacket against the chill. The station was lit by a harsh, fluorescent buzz, and inside, through the grimy window, I could see shelves stocked with the usual, chips, sodas, maybe a microwave burrito if I was lucky. The bell above the door jingled as I pushed it open, and the clerk looked up from behind the counter. He was in his late 50s, maybe, with a graying beard and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of too many night shifts. "Evening," he said, his voice flat, Midwestern drawl clipping the word. No smile, but no suspicion either, just the rote politeness of someone who'd seen every type of weary traveler. "Coffee still hot?" I asked, scanning the pot on the warmer. It looked fresh enough, dark and steaming. "Topped it off an hour ago," he replied, nodding toward the cups. I poured one black and handed him a 5. As he rang it up, I glanced at the map rack by the door, those free ones they give out at rest stops, folded and faded. "You got one of these for around here?" I said, unfolding a fresh one I'd grabbed, trying to figure out where I am. He slid my change across the counter, his gaze lingering on the map a beat too long. "Exit 47, you're in Riverside. Ain't much to it." I traced the highway with my finger. I-80 should have been a straight shot east-west, but nothing matched. No Exit 47, no Riverside. The closest town was Milford, 15 miles north, but that didn't line up with the ramp I'd taken. "Weird," I muttered, folding it back. "My GPS crapped out in the rain. Must have glitched," he shrugged, turning to restock a shelf of gum. "Happens. Storms messing with signals. You passing through?" "Yeah, heading to Des Moines. Any motels nearby?" "Down the road a piece. Elm Street. Can't miss it. Clean enough." I nodded, sipping the coffee. It was bitter, but it chased the fog from my head. Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle, and I climbed back into my sedan, the engine rumbling to life. The road curved gently, passing a row of mailboxes and a few scattered houses, their porch lights like distant stars. It felt normal. The kind of quiet Americana you'd see in a road trip movie, porches with rocking chairs, pickup trucks in driveways, the faint scent of wet earth. But as I drove, a nagging itch settled in. The GPS on my phone, which I'd plugged in to charge, still showed me on I-80, miles from where I knew I was. No signal bars, just a spinning wheel. I shook it off. Technology fails, right? People have been navigating without it for centuries. The sign for Elm Street appeared sooner than expected, a simple white marker half hidden by overgrown weeds. I turned left onto a street lined with modest bungalows, the kind built in the 50s, with aluminum siding and neatly trimmed lawns, even in the dark. The motel was at the end, a single-story affair called Riverside Rest, its neon vacancy sign flickering like a heartbeat. I parked and walked to the office, the door creaking open to reveal another empty counter. This one manned by a woman in her 40s, knitting under a lamp. "Room for the night?" I asked. She looked up, her needles pausing. "Single?" "Yeah, just need to sleep it off." She slid a key across. "Room 12, 45s. No questions, no ID." As I filled out the register, I noticed the date on the wall calendar, October 15th. That was right, but something about the year. Wait, no, it was current. I signed Alex Harper, Chicago, and pocketed the key. My room smelled of stale smoke and lemon cleaner, the bed sagging under a threadbare quilt. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the mattress, the day's drive pulling me under. But sleep didn't come easy. Around 3 a.m., a sound woke me, a soft tap like fingers on glass. The window overlooked the parking lot, empty save for my car. Rain pattered again, but that tap was rhythmic, deliberate. I sat up, heart picking up speed, and peered out. Nothing, just shadows dancing in the streetlight. Shaking my head, I lay back down. Imagination, I told myself. Long drives do that, turn your mind into a fun house, but as I drifted off, I couldn't shake the feeling that the room felt off. The lamp on the nightstand, its shade crooked. Had it been like that when I walked in, and the mirror above the dresser, my reflection stared back? But for a split second, it seemed like the eyes weren't quite mine, like they held a question I hadn't asked. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, grey and diffused. I showered quick, the water pressure weak but hot, and headed back to the office to check out. The woman was there, folding linens. "Sleep okay?" she asked, not looking up. "Fine," I lied. "Road still led back to the highway?" "Straight down Elm, hanger right at the stop sign. You'll see it." I thanked her and got in my car, the engine turning over with a reluctant growl. The street was quiet. No cars. No people out walking dogs or heading to work. Just the rustle of leaves in the breeze. At the stop sign, I turned right, expecting the familiar ramp to rise up. But the road stretched on, flat and unchanging, cornfields on both sides. No overpass, no sign of I-80. I drove for what felt like miles, the GPS still blank, the radio static. Finally, a sign appeared. Riverside limits. Back where I'd started. My stomach twisted. I'd looped somehow without noticing a curve or turn. Pulling over, I grabbed my phone. No service, but I could use the offline map. Still, nothing. Exit 47 didn't exist. Riverside wasn't on any chart. That's when I saw the gas station again, its lights winking in the distance. I was right back where I'd begun, as if the night had folded in on itself. The clerk from before stood outside, wiping down the pump, and when he looked my way, he raised a hand in greeting, like he'd been expecting me. I pulled into the gas station lot again, the gravel familiar under my tires, like I'd never left. The clerk was still there, rag in hand, polishing the pump with slow, methodical strokes. He straightened up as I approached, that same flat expression on his face, but now it carried a hint of recognition, like we'd shared a secret overnight. "Morning," he said, wiping his hands on his overalls. The air smelled of diesel and damp earth, the kind of scent that clings to rural Iowa mornings. "Yeah, morning," I replied, forcing a nod. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Listen, I think I got turned around. Tried to get back to the highway, but ended up here again." He tilted his head, squinting against the weak sunlight breaking through the clouds. "Happens sometimes. Roads play tricks after a storm. You need gas." I glanced at my tank, half full, plenty to get me out of whatever this loop was. But something in his casual tone made me pause. It was too easy, like he'd heard the same story a dozen times. "No, just directions. Straight shot to I-80, the ramp has to be close." "Follow the main road east," he said, pointing down the two-lane that snaked away from the station. "Can't miss it. Sign'll be there." I thanked him and got back in the car, my hands gripping the wheel a little tighter. The engine hummed to life, and I pulled out, watching him in the rear view as he went back to his work. No wave goodbye, just that lingering gaze until I rounded the bend. The road unspooled ahead, straight as a ruler, bordered by those endless cornfields, their stalks bending slightly in the breeze like they were listening. I kept my eyes peeled for the overpass, the merge lanes, anything that screamed highway. My phone sat in the cup holder. Screen dark, no signal, no bars, just a frozen map from last night. I fiddled with the radio dial, hoping for a local station to confirm where I was. Static crackled, then a faint voice broke through. Scattered showers this afternoon in the Des Moines area. But it faded before I could catch the call letters, swallowed by white noise. 10 minutes in, maybe 15, and still no sign of the interstate. The fields gave way to a stretch of woods, dense pines that crowded the edges, their needles dark and wet. A deer flashed across the road, too close, forcing me to brake hard. Heart pounding, I slowed to a crawl, scanning for more. That's when I noticed the mile marker, 47. It was rusted, half overgrown with vines, but unmistakable. Exit 47. I'd come full circle without turning. No, that couldn't be right. I accelerated again, pushing past the woods until the trees thinned, revealing the same row of mailboxes, the same scattered houses with their quiet porches. Elm Street sign loomed up on the left, weeds brushing its base just like before. My stomach knotted. I'd driven in a perfect loop, but the road hadn't curved, I'd swear to that. Straight as an arrow, yet here I was. I didn't stop at the motel this time. Instead, I kept going, past the bungalows and out toward what I hoped was open country. The town, if you could call it that, seemed to breathe around me, houses with curtains drawn, no movement behind the windows. A dog barked once, sharp and distant, then silence. It was mid-morning now, the clock ticking toward 10 a.m. But Riverside felt suspended, like everyone had stepped out for a meeting and forgotten to come back. Hunger gnawed at me. I hadn't eaten since a drive-through burger yesterday afternoon. Spotting a sign for Riverside Diner a half-mile up, I pulled into its lot, a few pickup trucks parked out front, their beds loaded with tools. Inside, the place was a throwback, checkered floors, vinyl booths, the sizzle of bacon on the grill. A waitress in a faded apron poured coffee for a couple of locals at the counter, farmers by the look of their flannel shirts and calloused hands. I slid into a booth, menu sticky under my fingers. "Coffee and eggs. Over easy," I told her when she came over. She nodded, scribbling without a word, her face lined with the kind of exhaustion that comes from years of the same routine. As she walked away, I leaned toward the counter. "Hey, quick question. How do I get back to I-80 from here? GPS is dead." The two men glanced my way, then at each other. The older one, with a John Deere cap pulled low, spoke first. "East on the main drag. Ramps right there. You from out of town?" "Chicago," I said. "Heading to Des Moines. Took exit 47 last night. Storm messed me up." They exchanged another look, shorter this time. The waitress set my plate down, eggs steaming, and the younger man cleared his throat. "Exit 47, huh? Yeah, that one's tricky. Keep straight, you'll see it. No elaboration, no map offered, just that." I ate quickly, the food tasting like cardboard despite the homey smell. Bill paid. I stepped outside, the bell jingling behind me. One of the trucks peeled out as I reached my car, kicking up dust that hung in the air like a veil. Back on the road, I followed their advice. East, straight. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows from the corn, but the landscape blurred into repetition. Field, tree line, mailbox post. My mind raced, piecing it together. Maybe the exit was real, just not marked right. Old roads get renumbered, that happens in the sticks. Or the storm had washed out a section, rerouting everything, rational explanations, the kind I'd tell myself over a beer back home. But then the radio flickered again, not static this time, a song. Old country tune I'd heard 1,000 times on these drives, lost in the back roads, chasing the night. The lyrics hit too close, and I switched it off. Ahead, the gas station appeared once more, its canopy a beacon in the flatness. I slammed on the brakes, tires skidding to a stop at the edge of the lot. The clerk was inside now, visible through the window, restocking cigarettes with the same unhurried pace. I sat there, engine idling, staring at the sign, Riverside Fuel. How? I'd driven east, miles of it, yet here it was, unchanged. My reflection in the windshield looked pale, eyes hollowed by confusion. Was I imagining the distance, hallucinating from lack of sleep? Pushing the door open, I marched inside, bell jingling sharply. "Okay, what's going on?" I demanded, louder than intended. "I keep ending up here. The road loops every time." He turned slowly, setting down a pack of Marlboros. His eyes met mine, steady, almost pitying. "Loops? Nah, roads are straight here. You sure you ain't turned wrong?" "I'm sure," I snapped, pulling out my phone. "Look, no signal, no map. This place isn't even on GPS. Exit 47 doesn't exist." He glanced at the screen, then back at me. "Tech's funny like that. Storm probably knocked out the towers. Try the diner. They got a payphone. Call someone." A payphone, like it was 1995. I rubbed my temples, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm. "How long you been working here?" "Long enough," he said, turning away. "Coffee's fresh if you need it." I left without another word, the door slamming behind me. Outside, the air felt thicker, pressing in. My car waited, innocent, but climbing in felt like surrender. As I drove off, east again, always east, I couldn't shake the sensation of eyes on me, not just the clerks, but the towns, the houses, the fields, even the road itself, watching, waiting for me to notice something I wasn't supposed to. By noon, the sun beat down mercilessly, turning the interior into an oven. Sweat trickled down my back, and I cracked the window, letting in the hum of insects. Another mile marker. 47. 1. Closer now? Or was it? The numbers mocked me, pulling me tighter into the coil. That's when I saw the figure on the roadside, a woman in a sundress, thumb out, hitchhiking. In all my loops, I'd missed her before. She looked about my age, hair tied back, a small bag at her feet. Normal enough, but in this nowhere she stood out like a signal. I slowed, debating. Strangers on empty roads. Rule number 1 is don't stop. But isolation was winning. Maybe she knew the way out. I pulled over, dust settling around us. "Need a ride?" I called. She smiled, faint but genuine, and nodded. "To the highway if you're going that way." "Des Moines," I said. "Hop in." As she slid into the passenger seat, buckling up, I caught a whiff of lavender, clean, out of place in the stale cab. "I'm Alex," I offered. "Clara," she replied, voice soft, Midwestern lilt. "Thanks. Walking's no fun in this heat." We pulled back onto the road, the engine's rumble filling the silence. She stared ahead, hands folded in her lap. "You from around here?" "No," I said. "Took a wrong exit last night. Been trying to get back to I-80 ever since. You know it?" She hesitated just a beat. "Yeah, it's close. Keep going." But her eyes darted to the side mirror, then back, like she was checking for followers. The tension in the car thickened, unspoken questions hanging between us. Who was she? And why did Riverside suddenly feel less empty? Clara settled into the seat, her bag tucked at her feet, and the car lurched forward onto the sun-baked road. The silence between us stretched, broken only by the steady thrum of the engine and the occasional chirp of cicadas from the fields. I glanced at her sidelong. She had that quiet poise, the kind you see in people who've spent too much time alone, her fingers tracing idle patterns on the hem of her dress. "So, what brings you out here?" I asked, trying to sound casual, like this was just another stretch of highway chit-chat. Visiting family, she said, her voice even, eyes fixed on the horizon, or trying to, got a bit turned around myself. I nodded, gripping the wheel. Join the club. This place, Riverside, it's like a bad dream you can't wake from. Every road I take dumps me right back at that gas station. She turned then, her expression unreadable, a faint crease between her brows. Riverside. Yeah, it's persistent. Persistent. The word hung there, heavier than it should have. I waited for her to elaborate, but she didn't. Just shifted to look out the window at the passing cornstalks, their leaves rustling like hushed whispers. The air in the car grew warmer, thicker, and I cracked my window wider, letting in a gust that carried the earthy tang of soil. We drove in that uneasy quiet for a few miles, the landscape unchanging, endless fields, the occasional fence post leaning like a tired sentinel. My mind wandered back to the loops, the way the mile markers taunted me, always circling to 47. Was it the heat playing tricks? Dehydration? I'd read about drivers losing it on long hauls, seeing patterns where there were none. But Clara was real, sitting right there, her presence a small anchor in the absurdity. You ever feel like you're being watched? I said finally, the words slipping out before I could stop them. It sounded paranoid, even to me, but her being here made it easier to voice the itch under my skin. She met my eyes, holding them a second too long. All the time, especially in places like this. Her answer didn't reassure me. If anything, it amplified the prickle at the back of my neck, like invisible threads tightening around us. Ahead, the road dipped slightly, and I spotted the familiar curve toward the woods. No, wait. That was the same stretch from earlier, the pines crowding in like they were closing ranks. My foot eased off the gas, the speedometer dropping to 40. Clara, this is the way I came before. The deer, the mile marker. It's all repeating. She leaned forward, peering through the windshield. Maybe it's a shortcut. Roads fork funny out here. But her tone lacked conviction, and when I glanced at her, her knuckles were white on the door handle. We passed the woods, the shadows flickering across her face, and sure enough, the Elm Street sign emerged on the left, weeds brushing its edges just as they had hours ago. I slowed to a stop at the intersection, engine idling, staring at it like it was a ghost. This isn't right, I muttered more to myself. I drove east, straight east. How am I back here? Clara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached for her bag, pulling out a worn road atlas, the kind with dog-eared pages and coffee stains. She flipped it open, tracing a finger along the I-80 corridor. Look, she said, turning it toward me. The map showed the interstate cutting through Iowa like a vein, exits numbered neatly from 1 to 300-something. No 47, no Riverside, just blank space between Milford and the next dot. See? It's not here. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it, like she was convincing herself as much as me. I took the atlas, my hands unsteady, and pored over it. She'd marked a route in pencil, faint lines veering off the highway into nowhere. You been here before? A few times, she admitted, closing the book gently. Family ties, like I said, but it's always the same. You try to leave, and it pulls you back. The words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through me. Family ties. What did that even mean in a place that didn't exist? I handed the atlas back, my throat dry. How do you get out? She hesitated, her gaze drifting to the rearview mirror, empty except for the road we'd just traveled. You don't question it too much. Just keep driving. Eventually, the ramp appears. Eventually, the word echoed the clerk's shrugs, the waitress's nonchalance, like this was normal, a quirk of the countryside to be endured. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The sun hung high now, baking the dashboard, and sweat beaded on my forehead. I pulled forward through the intersection, avoiding Elm Street, pushing deeper into the unknown, or what I hoped was unknown. The houses thinned out, giving way to more fields, but the repetition gnawed at me. A red barn appeared on the right, its paint chipped, silo standing sentinel. Hadn't I passed that this morning? No, impossible. I'd been looping the town proper, not out here, yet the details matched. A rusted tractor half buried in weeds, a faded no trespassing sign nailed to a post. Clara noticed too. "Slow down," she said quietly. "That's my aunt's place." I braked, the car crunching to a halt on the shoulder. The barn loomed, silent, windows like empty eyes. "You grew up around here?" She nodded, but her eyes were distant, fixed on the structure. "Summers. As a kid, we'd drive out from Des Moines, take this exit. Aunt Lydia had stories about the old highway, how it used to connect to something bigger before they rerouted everything. Stories, the kind that small towns thrive on, half-truths passed over coffee at diners. But her voice carried a weight, like those summers had left scars you couldn't see. "What happened to her?" "She's still here somewhere." Clara's laugh was brittle, barely a sound. Or was, haven't seen her in years. The isolation hit me then, harder than before. Not just the empty road, but the way Riverside seemed to swallow people, hold them in its quiet grip. I imagined her as a girl, racing through these fields, the highway, a promise of escape that never quite delivered. And now me, a stranger, caught in the same web. We sat there a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. Then, without warning, a curtain in the farmhouse window across the field twitched, just a flicker, gone before I could point it out. Clara stiffened, her breath catching. "Did you see that?" "Yeah." My pulse quickened, the prickle returning full force. Watched, definitely watched. Not by people, maybe, but by the place itself. The houses, the fields, the very air holding its breath. "Let's go," she urged, voice low. "Not here." I accelerated, the barn shrinking in the mirror, but the feeling clung. We drove on, the road straightening again, but now every shadow seemed deliberate. Every rustle in the corner signal. Clara grew quieter, her patterns on the dress more frantic, and I found myself glancing at her more often, wondering if she was part of the loop or the key to breaking it. By the time the gas station sign peeked over the horizon, again, I was gripping the wheel like a lifeline. The canopy sagged just as before, the clerk's figure visible inside, moving with that same unhurried rhythm. Clara placed a hand on my arm, light but firm. "Don't stop this time. Keep going." But as we approached, the road seemed to narrow, funneling us toward the lot like a magnet. My foot hovered over the brake, instinct warring with her words. The station grew larger, inescapable, and in that moment the doubt deepened. Not just about the town, but about her. Who was Clara, really? A fellow lost soul, or something woven into Riverside's fabric, drawing me tighter into the unraveling? We blew past it, tires humming, but the rear view showed the clerk stepping out, watching us go. His wave was slow, almost beckoning, and Clara's hand tightened on my arm before she let go. The fields blurred by, but the pull lingered, a silent promise that the loop wasn't done with us yet. The road stretched on, unyielding as we sped past the gas station, its lights receding like a fading memory in the rear view. Clara's hand lingered in the air for a moment after she released my arm, her fingers curling back into her lap as if she'd touched something hot. I kept my eyes forward, but the weight of that clerk's gaze pressed against my back, even after the curve hid him from view. The engine's hum filled the car, a monotonous drone that did nothing to ease the knot in my chest. "Thanks for not stopping," Clara said after a while, her voice cutting through the tension like a whisper in a library. She adjusted her seatbelt, the click echoing oddly in the confined space. "Yeah, well, figured we'd break the pattern this time." I tried to sound light, but it came out strained, my throat tight from the dry air. The sun dipped lower now, casting the fields in long, jagged shadows that clawed at the edges of the asphalt. We'd been driving for what felt like hours. though the dashboard clock insisted only 20 minutes had passed since the barn. Time was slipping here, elastic and unreliable, just like everything else. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the side mirror, flicking back every few seconds. It's smart. The more you circle, the harder it gets to leave. I shot her a glance, the atlas still open on her lap like an unsolved puzzle. You talk like you've done this before, more than a few times. Clara's fingers stilled on the pages, and she closed the book with a soft thud. I have, not always by choice. My aunt, Lydia, she'd warn us kids about the exit, said it was a shortcut to nowhere, a place that latches on if you're not careful. We laughed it off back then, city folks from Des Moines thinking small-town tales were just that. But after she passed, I came back to settle things. That's when I first looped. Her words painted a picture I didn't want, a life tethered to this invisible snare, summers turning into something inescapable. I imagined her driving these same roads as a teenager, radio blasting to drown out the quiet, only to find the horizon bending back on itself. And you got out? How? Eventually. She paused, her gaze drifting to the cornfields whipping by. You stop fighting the pull. Let it show you what it wants. The vagueness gnawed at me, a loose thread I couldn't resist tugging. What did it want? From her? From me? The car felt smaller now, the air between us charged with unspoken histories. I accelerated slightly, the speedometer climbing to 55, as if velocity could outrun the doubt creeping in. But the landscape betrayed me. Another fence post, another cluster of mailboxes, all too familiar. We'd veered off the main drag without me noticing, or maybe the road had shifted under us, subtle as a sigh. Clara, level with me, I said, my voice dropping. Is this real? The town, the loops? Am I losing it? She turned fully toward me then, her face pale in the slanting light, eyes searching mine like she was weighing a confession. It's real enough, but it's not what you think. Riverside isn't just a place, it's remembered by people who've left pieces of themselves here. My aunt, the clerk, even strangers like you. They all feed it, keep it going. Remembered. The word sent a chill down my spine, unrelated to the cooling evening air. I thought of the motel's crooked lamp, the tap at the window, the way my reflection had seamed off. Was that it? Echoes of other drivers, other nights, layering over mine until I couldn't tell where I ended and the town began. My hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles aching. Ahead, the woods loomed again, denser this time, the pines knitting together like a barrier. But as we entered the shadows, something shifted, a narrow dirt track branching off to the right, unmarked, half hidden by underbrush. I'd missed it before, or it hadn't been there. Instinct screamed to stay on the pavement, but Clara leaned forward. Take that. It's a way through. I hesitated, the turn coming up fast. To where? More loops? Trust me, she said, her hand brushing my shoulder again, warmer now, insistent. I've walked it. Against better judgment, I veered onto the track, the car jolting over ruts, gravel pinging against the undercarriage. The trees closed in, branches scraping the roof like fingers testing a lock. The path narrowed, forcing me to slow to a crawl, headlights cutting feeble swaths through the gloom. No birds called. No wind stirred the leaves. It was as if the woods held their breath, waiting. Clara grew still beside me, her breathing shallow. This was Aunt Lydia's shortcut, to the old ramp, before they paved over it. The track twisted, sunlight dappling the dashboard in fleeting patches, and I caught glimpses of rusted relics, half buried in the dirt. An abandoned signpost, its letters faded to ghosts. A chain-link fence sagging into the earth. My mind raced, piecing together fragments, the clerk's pitying look, the diner's locals with their shared glances. Were they all bound here, remnants of lives that couldn't quite leave? We emerged from the woods into a clearing, the car bumping to a stop at what looked like an overgrown overpass. Concrete slabs cracked and vine-choked. rising like the skeleton of a forgotten bridge. No highway above, just empty sky fading to dusk. I killed the engine, the sudden silence deafening, broken only by the distant hum of crickets starting their evening chorus. "This is it?" I whispered, stepping out, the ground soft under my shoes. Clara followed, her bag slung over her shoulder, standing at the edge of the slab. She nodded, tracing the cracks with her toe. "The original exit 47. They closed it decades ago. Budget cuts, rerouting. But it remembers. Pulls people who need to stay. Need to stay." The phrase twisted in my gut, stirring memories I hadn't unpacked. The empty apartment back in Chicago, the conference that felt like just another excuse to run. Isolation on the road, sure. But this? I turned to her, shadows playing across her face. "And you? You stay every time?" "Not every time." Her voice cracked slightly, the first real fracture in her calm. "But enough. Lydia's things, letters, photos, they're all here, waiting. I come back for them and it holds on." I climbed the slab, boots crunching on gravel, the height giving a false sense of elevation over the fields below. From up here, Riverside unfolded like a diorama, the gas station's lights flickering on, the motel's neon pulse, houses dotting the grid like pinned insects. It looked contained, almost peaceful, but the loops told another story, a place that fed on reluctance, on the parts of us we tried to leave behind. A rustle in the underbrush snapped me back, Clara rifling through her bag, pulling out a small envelope, yellowed with age. This was hers, a letter to no one, says the exit chooses who it takes. She handed it to me, her fingers cold against mine. The paper felt brittle, ink smudged. "If you find this, turn back. The road knows your name." My name? No, but it felt personal, like the words had waited for someone like me. Doubt flooded in, thick and suffocating. Was Clara leading me deeper or out? Her eyes held mine, pleading, but the woods whispered alternatives: run, drive, question everything. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples, and the first stars pricked through, indifferent. "We should go," I said, folding the letter, but my feet stayed rooted, the pull invisible yet ironclad. Clara nodded, but neither of us moved, the clearing holding us in its quiet embrace, the town's memory weaving tighter around our shadows. The stars sharpened overhead, cold pinpricks against the deepening purple, as Clara and I stood there on the cracked overpass, the letter's words burning in my hand like a low fever. The air had cooled, carrying the faint metallic tang of rust from the concrete underfoot, and the fields below rustled softly, as if the corn itself was stirring with the night's approach. I folded the envelope carefully, slipping it into my pocket, but its weight lingered, a reminder that some things don't stay buried. Clara watched me, her silhouette edged by the fading light, her expression a mix of resolve and something softer, almost sorrowful. "You feel it now, don't you?" she said, her voice barely above the cricket's hum. "The way it settles in your bones." I did. It wasn't fear exactly, not the sharp kind that makes you run, but a quiet erosion, like sand shifting under your feet on a lakeshore back home. Riverside wasn't just a detour, it was a mirror, reflecting the parts of me I'd ignored on those endless drives. The late nights staring at motel ceilings, the calls to friends that went unanswered, the life in Chicago that felt more like a habit than a home. The exit hadn't chosen me at random. It had waited for the moment my guard slipped, when fatigue blurred the lines between going and staying. "Yeah," I admitted, my breath visible in the chill. "But why us? Why pull people in like this?" She stepped closer to the edge, peering down at the town's faint glow, the gas station's canopy a hazy beacon, the motel's sign winking like an unblinking eye. It's not about why, it's about what you leave behind. Lydia always said the road remembers the unfinished. The conferences you skip, the conversations you avoid, the places you drive through without seeing. It holds them, gives them shape. Her words wove into the night, threading through my thoughts, and I saw it then, not with my eyes, but in the way the shadows pooled at the overpass's base, stretching toward us like invitations. Flashes came unbidden, my empty apartment, the stack of unread emails from the office, the way I'd waved off a dinner invite last week with some excuse about the road. Riverside wasn't trapping me, it was offering a pause. A chance to confront the drift I'd called freedom. And Clara, her summers here, her aunt's ghost in the letter, it was the same for her, a tether she couldn't quite sever. I turned to her, the question forming before I could stop it. You come back for this? For her stories? The loops? She met my gaze, her eyes reflecting the first true dark. At first, yes, to close things. But now, it's easier to stay in the rhythm. The diner coffee, the clerk's nods, they make the quiet bearable. Out there, on the highway, it's just noise. The pull intensified, a subtle current drawing me toward the slab's center, where vines snaked up like veins. I resisted, planting my feet, but the sensation spread, a warmth in my chest, almost comforting, whispering that one more loop wouldn't hurt. Clara felt it too. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if surrendering to an old friend. In that moment, the revelation settled, silent and profound. This place didn't steal you. It revealed how much of you wanted to be stolen. The hidden longing for a stop when the world demanded constant motion. We stood there longer than I realized, time folding again, the stars wheeling overhead in silent judgment. The woods around us seemed to lean in, branches creaking softly, and from the fields came a distant sound. A car engine, faint, approaching from the direction of the town. Headlights pierced the gloom, sweeping across the clearing like searchlights, and my pulse quickened, not from alarm, but recognition. It was my sedan. No, wait, the one I'd left at the gas station. No, that couldn't be. Clara tensed beside me. It's starting again. The vehicle slowed at the track's edge, its outline familiar. A grey sedan, mine, idling with the door ajar. But I'd driven it here. Parked it at the clearing's lip, hadn't I? Doubt flooded back, colder now, mingling with the night's bite. I blinked, and the image sharpened, the keys still in my pocket, the engine off, yet there it sat, waiting as if I'd never left the seat. Go, Clara urged, her hand on my elbow, guiding me down the slab, before it pulls harder. We hurried toward it, gravel crunching underfoot, but as we neared, the phantom car faded, dissolving into the underbrush like mist. My real sedan waited where I'd left it, ease cold in my hand. I slid behind the wheel, Clara climbing in beside me, her bag clutched tight. The engine turned over with a reluctant cough, headlights blooming to life, illuminating the track ahead. As we bumped back toward the main road, the overpass receding in the mirror, silence wrapped around us once more. No explanations passed between us, just the shared understanding that we'd glimpsed the heart of it, the town's quiet hunger for the unresolved. Riverside didn't end. It echoed, in the loops of the road, in the letters tucked away, in the lives half-lived. We emerged onto the pavement, the 2 lanes stretching east under a canopy of stars. The GPS flickered to life suddenly. Bars climbing, no signal lost, just dormant. I-80 appeared on the screen, the ramp mere miles away. Clara directed me with a nod, her face illuminated by the dashboard glow, peaceful now, as if a burden had lifted. Turn left up here, she said. You'll see it. I did. The tires humming over familiar asphalt, but the fields whispered on, their rustle carrying a final, faint invitation. The overpass rose ahead, real this time, sodium lights buzzing overhead, merging lanes flowing smooth into the interstate's endless ribbon. I accelerated onto it, the speed building, distance pulling us free. Clara smiled faintly as the town shrank behind. Safe travels, Alex. But in the rear view, her figure blurred at the edge of the woods, thumb out again, waiting for the next curve in the night. The exit sign, 47, flashed by, real on every map now, but its green glow lingered in my mind, a question unanswered, echoing long after the highway swallowed the dark.